Hi, this is Mr. Marshall from Truganina College. This lesson is for the unit of measurement and geometry in Year 9 Maths. This is our first lesson, which is a bit of a revision on conversions. Now, our learning intention today, which you will write in your books, is we are learning to convert the length and area using metric units. And our success criteria is I am successful when I can identify the metric units of measurement, understand how metric units are interrelated, and convert between different metric units. Now we have here a recipe, and if you open up some old recipe books, you'll notice stuff like this, where you'll see ounces and teaspoons. Teaspoons are still used and tablespoons, but ounces hasn't been used for a bit. So what you'd have to do is pull out a conversion to work out that 1 ounce is 28 grams. So 4 ounces will be 113 grams. And so that you'd be able to then weigh it on your metric weights at home. So what I want you to try to do is look at these items and think of what units of measurement, and we're talking about metric units of measurement, would be the most appropriate for measuring. First, the height of the door in your room. Next, the length of a pencil. Next, a sheet of paper, the area of a sheet of paper, the area of a country, and the size of a dot on a die. So you can pause it, write down your answers, and then unpause it so that you can have a look at a couple of our answers. So for the height of a door, most doors would be looking at about meters. Usually it might be 2 meters, maybe 2.5, depending on the size of the wall. Sometimes you might have some bigger ones, especially if they're for vehicles, but always in meters. Length of a pencil, usually centimeters. Area of a sheet of paper, we use a unit called centimeters squared. Area of a country, we'd probably go kilometers squared. There are a couple of other units we could use, but kilometers squared is usually used. And a dot on a die, we'd use millimeters squared because it's just so small. So converting distance, we've got kilometers, meters, centimeters, and millimeters. Now, as we go down from kilometers to meters, we multiply by 1,000. From meters to centimeters, we multiply by 100. From centimeters to millimeters, we multiply by 10. If we're going up the scale, so if we're going from millimeters to centimeters, we're going to divide by 10 because 10 millimeters is 1 centimeter. Again, from centimeters to meters, we're going to divide by 100. 100 centimeters is 1 meter. And then from meters to kilometers, we're going to divide by 1,000 because 1,000 meters is 1 kilometer. Okay, now when we're going from big to large units, we multiply. So a way to remember big multiply to small is big mum small, BMS. So big, medium, multiply to small. So we always multiply as we're going down, and then we divide as we come back up. So let's try some conversions. I want you to copy this table into your workbooks, and now try to convert these numbers yourself. You can use the conversion table up here. It would be good if you can just move the decimal point, but if you need to, you can use a calculator. So you can pause here. Once you've filled in the table, unpause, and we'll go through the answers. So the answers for these are here. So 5.1 meters becomes 0.0051 kilometers. And what I did was I just moved that decimal point 1, 2, 3 spots because we're dividing by 1,000. We went from meters to there. 5.1 meters is 510 centimeters. Again, meters to centimeters, I times by 100. And then I went from centimeters to millimeters, I times by another 10. So we got 5,100. And that's the same for all of these questions. So for your workings, this is what you would be going through, either both your thinking and your writing of what you're putting onto the sheet. So for this first one, 37 millimeters, I'd be thinking there's 10 millimeters per centimeter, so I'm going to divide by 10. And my working is 37 divided by 10 is 3.7 centimeters. Make sure you put those units on at the end to say what you've converted it into. Next one, from kilometers into centimeters. Well, I've got to go from kilometers to meters first, which is timesing 1,000, and then meters into centimeters, which is timesing by another 100. So my 2.54 times by 1,000 from kilometers to meters, and then times by 100 from meters to centimeters. And there's our answer again, making sure I put the units in there. So here we have the conversion chart for area. Remember, length is from one point to another. We're measuring along a line or a curve. Area is the space inside a shape. Now, normally we measure area as centimeters squared, millimeters squared, meters squared, kilometers squared. And because we're doing that squared, we've got the same numbers here, times 1,000, but it's times 1,000 squared, times 100 squared, times 10 squared. And then going back up the chain, we're dividing by 10 squared, dividing by 100 squared, and dividing by 1,000 squared. Now we can easily do this on our calculators. We have an area, we then just times by whatever squared, and we can type that in. But if you don't have a calculator, it might actually be useful knowing the numbers. So from kilometers squared to meters squared, we're timesing by 1,000,000, because that's 1,000 squared. From meters squared to centimeters squared, we're timesing by 10,000, because that's 100 squared. And from centimeters squared to millimeters squared, we're timesing by 100, because that's 10 squared. And as I said, as we go up, we divide by those same numbers. So again, here's two examples going to meters squared. So we're going from kilometers squared to meters squared. So first off, we know it's bigger, so we're going to multiply. And we know that the number's 1,000 squared, because from kilometers squared to meters squared is 1,000 squared. So we write 56.5 times 1,000 squared. We can type that in our calculator and we get 56,500,000 meters squared. And again, we must make sure that we've got those units on there. Make sure that that squared is that's a superscript or above the line. It's not at the same level as m, it's a little bit above. For our second example, we're going from millimeters squared to meters squared. So we're going to divide because millimeters squared is smaller than meters squared. So from millimeters squared to centimeters squared, we're dividing by 10 squared. And from centimeters squared to meters squared, we're dividing by 100 squared. So here we've got our number, the 84,600,000. Divide by 10 squared, divide by 100 squared equals 84.6 centimeters squared, or squared centimeters. And again, we've got the little 2 there, the squared symbol to show us it's squared. So I want you to try these conversions again. You can pause it, and then we can unpause to have a look at the answers. You can use the chart up here to give you a little bit of a guide for converting these. So the answers for these are like this. As you notice, when we convert, even from these numbers here, we get very, very small numbers in the kilometers. We're talking from millions of meters squared becomes just kilometers squared, nothing too big. And as we get smaller and smaller to our millimeters, the numbers get really small down this end, or really big down this end, because 7 kilometers squared is quite a few. As you can see, it's 7.2 million millimeters squared. So our exercises today, you'll be working on the worksheet that is in your learning pack for this week. You will be working at your level, so those who are at the practice level just need to do questions 1 to 3. Those at the consolidating level can be doing questions 1 to 6, and those at the master level can be doing questions 4 to 9. Obviously, if you're doing the practice level questions and you get to question 3 and you find that they weren't too hard, you can extend yourself and move yourself up to that consolidating level. And same ways, if you're at the consolidating level, you can move up and attempt those harder worded questions in the master level. And our reflection for today is, from your own memory, can you draw the 2 diagrams for converting units length and units areas? And what is a hectare? You can have a research of that. And how does it fit in with these metric units? Can you convert from kilometers and meters to hectares, or do you need to convert from something else?